Hello and happy holidays. Let's talk about the neighbors. Yes, the actual neighbors. The regular, non-titled, non-protected by the palace lawyers neighbors who wake up, pay taxes, mind their business, and suddenly find themselves living next to the most self-righteous property expansion project Windsor has ever seen. Because apparently, when you're William and Kate, privacy means everyone else moves. According to the latest press drip-fed straight from the palace-approved pity pipeline, Kate and William's neighbors are fuming. And honestly, I don't blame them. I'd be fuming too if I was lectured for years about sustainability, environmental responsibility, modest living, and thinking of others, only to watch the future king quietly gobble up land like it's a royal all-you-can-eat buffet. Now, let's pause right there. Because the headline wants you to think this is about grumpy neighbors being unreasonable. No. This isn't about people hating royalty. This is about hypocrisy fatigue. The British public is tired. The neighbors are tired. The environment is tired. Even the trees are probably whispering, "Didn't they say they cared about us?" They told us Adelaide Cottage was the dream, the cozy, humble, modest family home. Remember that PR campaign? The endless articles about how small it was, how down-to-earth they were, how they were just like normal people, except with security, staff, estates, and inherited wealth. But now suddenly Adelaide Cottage is cursed. Cursed? Since when? Was the curse called too small for the ego? And just like that, the so-called forever home has been upgraded. Bigger land, bigger footprint, bigger disruption, bigger inconvenience for everyone else who didn't get a say. But don't worry. William and Kate are very concerned about the planet. They said so on a stage with a microphone, so that must count. This is where the math starts mathing in the worst way. You cannot preach conservation while quietly expanding your personal territory. You cannot lecture people about carbon footprints while stomping around with a royal-sized boot. You cannot wag your finger at the public and then whisper, "But not us," behind palace walls. And here's the part the media keeps skimming past like it's a footnote instead of the main course. Neighbors complained, repeatedly, fresh complaints, not old ones, new ones, which means whatever was promised behind closed doors, it didn't land. But of course, the neighbors are framed as the problem. They're fuming, they're unhappy, they're complaining. Funny how that language works, isn't it? It subtly shifts blame away from the people with unlimited power and onto regular folks who just wanted to live peacefully without a royal land grab happening next door. And let's talk about timing, because moving just before Christmas is not the wholesome hallmark moment the palace wants you to imagine. It's disruptive, it's chaotic, it's stressful. It's when families are stretched thin, businesses are closing for holidays, and communities are already juggling enough. But apparently, the royal calendar does not include Empathy Week. And yet, where is the outrage from the same media that scrutinized every single step Harry and Meghan took? Silent, muted, suddenly very understanding, suddenly very, well, they had no choice. Interesting how grace only flows one direction. Harry and Meghan couldn't breathe without being accused of destroying Britain, but William and Kate can relocate, expand, inconvenience, and override neighbors, and it's framed as unfortunate controversy, not selfish, not entitled, not out of touch, just unfortunate. Let's be very clear. No one is mad that they moved. People move. Life happens. What people are mad about is the two-faced branding. You don't get to cosplay environmentalism while practicing quiet excess. You don't get to play the humble future monarch while acting like the land bends to your will. This is the same couple that gets glowing coverage for attending Earthshot events while flying private, the same duo praised for modern leadership while clinging to medieval entitlement. The disconnect is no longer subtle, it's loud, it's obvious, and now it's literally upsetting the neighbors. And let's talk about this phrase floating around, forever home. Royal translation, until we want something bigger. Because if Adelaide Cottage was truly the dream, truly the plan, truly the modest choice, why the sudden upgrade? Why the rush? Why the secrecy? Why the fallout? The palace loves to sell stability while delivering chaos. They love to preach unity while breeding resentment. And nothing exposes that faster than real people saying, "Hey, this is affecting us." Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan live thousands of miles away, minding their business, planting trees, funding mental health initiatives, supporting communities, and somehow they're still the villains in the tabloids. Make it make sense. The difference? Harry and Meghan don't pretend to be something they're not. They don't lecture the public while doing the opposite in private. When they choose privacy, they actually move away instead of expanding into someone else's space. What we're seeing here isn't just a housing story, it's a credibility collapse. Because once neighbors start speaking out, the fairy tale cracks. You can't spin away lived experience. You can't PR your way out of someone else's disrupted life. And let's not ignore the language used by the palace-adjacent press. Selfish, in quotes. Quotation marks doing the heavy lifting to suggest doubt. As if the word was unfair. As if the neighbors are exaggerating. As if we haven't watched this pattern repeat for years. At some point, the public stops buying the image. The shine wears off. And stories like this? They accelerate the process, because nothing says out of touch like preaching restraint while quietly expanding your royal bubble. This is why the monarchy keeps losing the plot. They confuse silence for consent. They mistake tradition for entitlement. They assume people will always look the other way. But neighbors don't. Neighbors notice noise, disruption, changes, boundaries crossed. Neighbors aren't impressed by titles. And now the neighbors are talking, and suddenly the palace doesn't look so serene behind those carefully curated photos. So no, this isn't about a house. It's about accountability. It's about practicing what you preach. It's about whether the future of the monarchy understands that leadership isn't about taking more, it's about considering others. Because if you can't coexist peacefully with your neighbors, how exactly are you planning to represent a nation? And that, my friends, is the real controversy. Not the move, not the timing, but the mindset. While the media scrambles to protect the image, the truth is sitting right there, plain as day. The gap between words and actions has never been wider, and people are noticing, quietly, loudly, right next door. So to the neighbors at Forest Lodge, solidarity, because when regular people start calling out royal inconsistency, you know something shifted. And to the palace, maybe next time try practicing the values before selling them, because the neighbors are watching, and this time, they're not impressed. Happy holidays, family.